Hello class, my name is Jason Eads. I am a law enforcement officer here in Cameron County. I work with the constable's office. My paper is on law enforcement's role in today's society and the racial biases and how they affect that role. Recent events of racial profiling and law enforcement have led to greater scrutiny. By that, there's been massacres in Louisiana, Dallas, and pretty much increased danger to law enforcement now on the job. Ethnic minorities have responded to these recent events in clashes with the police, protests. They've introduced Black Lives Matter. The Black Lives Matter, most of which their protests are peaceful, but unfortunately in recent times we've seen people may be associated with them and may not be, but they've used violence to kind of try to get their message across. I don't believe that is the way to do it. Everybody is entitled in the United States to protest if they have a belief and they want it heard. Everybody has that right. But, our laws protect everyone from, non-peaceful protests. And as long as people are protesting peacefully, there shouldn't be any problem with that. But, unfortunately, some of these are not peaceful. Law enforcement goes back to the Roman Empire, where the army would patrol the villages and the cities and make sure that order was kept. Okay, if there was taxes, they would collect taxes. They would deliver documents from the court. They would arrest people who had warrants out for their arrest, and that moved up to Robert Peel's idea of the bobbies, which introduced the watch and ward version of police force, where police officers walked a beat, armed with a whistle and a baton and handcuffs, and it was a more intimate area due to the fact that they were on foot, or in some cases on horse, I believe. But they were really, really close to the community. Everybody in the community knew who that police officer was and would see them every single day, walking the beat, making sure that everybody was safe if they needed help. Where those, the comics and stuff where you see the police officer walking, the older lady walking across the street, that police officer would help. Well, that's where that came from. Basically that developed a good rapport with the community into the law enforcement. Now over time, of course, modern day law enforcement has changed with technology, supposedly to make it safer and easier to do our job. We now introduce cameras. We have more non-lethal options in regards to use of force. And everything that we do is scrutinized through our department, through the community, through the government. Everybody knows what we're doing. But the values that law enforcement have essentially always been hired under are still there. These values are, someone who is trustworthy, who's loyal, who's dedicated to protecting the community up to the loss of his life. He's willing to protect. Now, also the oath. I'll talk a little bit about the oath that I chose, or I decided to take to protect. I would risk my life for a complete stranger if I had to, and I will do my best every single day to give the community my all, and protect them the best I can. Now, some people talk about use of force in law enforcement, and although our job is tricky. We can't just walk up to somebody and grab them, throw them to the ground, and put handcuffs on and say, hey, you're coming with me. It doesn't work like that. We have rules and regulations we have to follow. But in the instances that we do have to use force, law enforcement is protected by the Supreme Court. Basically, Harlow versus Fitzgerald, 1982, gives us what they call qualified immunity. So essentially, our use of force, up to the use of lethal force, is protected under qualified immunity. So basically, if we have somebody that does not want to come into custody, that's broke the law, and we need to use some form of force, we can do that. Okay, but where it ends is we don't use too much force. We use just enough force necessary to effect that arrest or to protect someone else, whatever it might be. And also, Black Lives Matter, the movement kind of started around Michael Brown's death, when there was no indictment of the officer who had to use lethal force at that moment in time. So riots ensued, and pretty much disorder, arose. I interviewed a good friend of mine. Who's also a police officer in Cameron County, and pretty much got his opinion. Although has some different outlooks than me, we still look at things the same. We took an oath to protect the community, and we want to make sure that order is always maintained. I asked him some very simple questions, nothing, out of the ordinary. Unfortunately, the one limitation of my paper is I was unable to meet with somebody who is with Black Lives Matter just to get their take on it. So I did try to remain neutral in regards to my paper, but of course, as you all know, we all have our own biases and we all have our own opinions and views. But I also read an interesting article in regards to a theory, group conflict theory, us versus them, which basically states you take a whole bunch of people who have different views and you put them on teams and you try to pretty much get them to do the same goal, which is win the game. Okay, so essentially you have people with different views working together to accomplish a mutual goal, and they were able to do that without any harm. They worked together. Some of the references I used, of course, was my personal communication, which was an interview. I got a lot of information from the New York Times, even the Black Lives Matter website. National Public Radio had some great articles in regards to racial biases, CNN, and a book of social beings, Core Matters in Psychology, second edition, chapter 11, had a great article in regards to racial biases. And of course, the SupremeCourt.gov would give good opinions, as well as the information I got for the case files that I utilized in this paper. Again, my name is Jason Eads, and I am a police officer here in Cameron County. And through this research, I do realize that we do need to talk and communicate better with one another. Thank you for your time.